Am I audible? Oh, hang on. I think I might have an internet issue. Whether you are a student, a teacher, or a working professional, with the onset of pandemic, video meetings must have become a very important part of your day-to-day lives. And with most of the major companies announcing permanent work from home schemes, it does not look like video meetings are going to leave our lives anytime soon either. Keeping all this in mind, in this particular video, let's actually build an application using Flutter and Jitsi where we'll implement the video meeting feature. And since we are doing this as a part of the LinkedIn clone series, let's actually add it to the application we built in our last video. Hey there guys, how is it going? It is AB this side and I'm an upcoming software engineer at Oracle and finally an undergraduate from IIT Guwahati. In this channel we mostly learn new concepts, write code and build real life applications just like this one. So if you're new to this channel or if you're watching my video for the very first time, consider subscribing to the channel. In this particular video, we are actually in the second video of our LinkedIn clone series, and in our last video we had built the LinkedIn chat application and also implemented the smart replies feature using the Google ML kit. So if you have not watched that video before, I highly recommend you to go ahead and do that, because not only you will learn things like building a chat application or implementing ML kit with Flutter, you'd also understand the basic project structure or the folder structure that we have, and also understand the UI that we had built before, because that was explained pretty thoroughly over there. So again, reiterating my statement, go ahead and watch that video and come back to this video. I'll attach a link to that in the description below and also on the top of here as a CTA, so you can also go ahead and watch that particular video. Alright, before I explain further about this video, I would like you to go ahead and watch a final demonstration of the thing that we're going to build today. Alright, I'm sure you found that interesting as well. Let's have a look at what's new today. So that's Jitsi Meet, right? So let's have a look at the Jitsi Meet's website and talk a little bit more about it and try to understand why and how it's gonna work for us. Alright, so now we are looking at the Jitsi Meet website. So the very first thing that strikes your eye is actually we have start and join meetings for free, and which means we don't have to actually log in or we don't need an account here. And the next thing is this particular thing, which is actually whatever URL you're actually generating for your meeting, that comes from the topic name that you're going to type. So if you say liquid fundings fold frequently, so your meeting link actually becomes meet.jit.si/ that particular name that you had actually put here. So that's the second thing to notice. And the third thing that we will notice obviously is that it's actually a freemium website. By that I mean it has a free version and it has a paid version, just like Zoom. And here we have the 8x8 Meet, which is something which you'll see in the form of ads and and other things which will come up even when we actually build our application. If you have noticed in the demonstration that I showed you right now, we also had seen an advertisement for this particular Meet, and that's not something we can remove without writing an email to them, so let's just ignore it for now. What we will do right now is I'll show you the Docusaurus website that we have built for this particular video, and we'll talk a little bit about how things are and how we are going to actually structure this particular video and understand how we are going to write the code before we actually go ahead and start writing code now. So we are actually maintaining a Docusaurus website corresponding to our entire LinkedIn clone series, so that we actually update the tutorials for every video that we make. So in here we have the smart replies video that we have already made, and we have a section corresponding to that. We also have a video meeting section corresponding to this particular video that we are making right now. And we also have blogs. So corresponding to each and every video I make, I usually write blogs for people who don't have time to watch the video, or if you want to just skim through things. So a blog is really helpful. So you can come here and read the blogs as well. I'll attach a link to this website in the description below, so you don't have to worry about not finding this website. Okay. So coming to this particular section for this video, that is video meetings, we do have a few things here. So first of all, we have the basics where we talk about why video meetings are essential, and why Jitsi is good for us. It's actually a fully encrypted and 100% open source video conferencing solution. And we also talk about a few more features of Jitsi, like HD audio video, and unlimited free meeting access for up to 100 participants, and also end-to-end encryption and a lot of other features that it has. And that should be enough to convince us why we should be using Jitsi. And if we go to setup, now this is important because you'll actually be starting with this thing called a starter project. This is the GitHub repository of our particular video, and you see this folder called 02 video meetings, and there you'll find the starter folder here, and it has the starter project in it. But you don't have to worry about it right now. We'll actually be cloning this and running it for ourselves. But the setup that you have to do once you actually clone the starter project, it has to be the same that we did in our last video, and in this particular section I talk about it extensively. In this video we don't have to do anything specific, or we don't have to add any specific keys or things like that. So the setup instructions basically stay the same as the previous section. Now for the idea. So we need to understand what we are going to do before we write our code. So two things that we need to take care of is actually we don't have to set up an OAuth application or use any APIs, because we can directly get the meeting links from our topic name. And the topic name that we actually use to generate the URL should be unique and hard to guess. That is because I don't want to have any privacy violations if the URL is very easy to guess and random people are joining our meeting. So that's why we have to carefully choose our URL. So now we have two types of meetings that we want to actually demonstrate. So we do have the instant meetings, which can actually be joined instantly. And we do have our scheduled meetings, which can be actually scheduled for a particular date time and can be joined only 5 minutes prior to that particular time in which it was scheduled for. So for each of these, we'll have to generate separate URLs. For instant meetings, we can actually create one single URL because it's between two users. So the two users who are actually engaged in the conversation. So whenever they want to meet, they can actually choose a particular URL. But for scheduled meetings, we will have to somehow store the information about the particular date, time, and the duration of that meeting inside the URL itself. So what's the most ideal solution? I just thought that we can actually encode the string into a base 64 format. So in that way, we'll also make it harder for people to guess. And also ensure that we are storing the information. So the first thing we are using is a generated group chat ID, which is a combination of the Firebase user IDs of the two users engaged in the conversation. And the next thing that we will store for the scheduled meetings is actually the duration and the time. So a sample meeting link will look something like this. And you can just ignore this MLI hyphen part. I'll talk about it in a bit. But the thing that you see from here, the meet dot thing and the URL that you have, that will actually be the URL for our particular meeting, and it's a sample URL that we are seeing right now. But again, what is this MLI hyphen doing here? So MLI hyphen is actually representing the type of meeting that we have. So MLI will actually stand for meeting link instant, and MLS will stand for meeting link scheduled. Now we do have text content, we do have meeting type content. We'll also be having images later on in a future video. So since we are storing all of that in Firebase documents, I need to make sure that I'm able to actually differentiate between them and show different type of UI for different content. For example, right now here you can actually see that we are talking about meetings, and we have a particular UI for meetings. So that is why I have put this keyword sort of thing to differentiate between the different type of content that we have. And this is a sample function that just does that. So if the type of my particular content is MLI, I'm actually returning the instant meeting item content. Otherwise I'm going for scheduled meeting, otherwise I'm going for the chat item. So this is something which we'll even build together while we write our code. Alright, the next thing that we have is the flow. So initially we will start with the chat screen. We will build a bottom model sheet like this. Then we'll go ahead and go to the chat meeting, which is this particular bottom sheet that we have. And inside that bottom sheet, we will handle the on pressed functions for both of these particular buttons. That is to start an instant meeting and to schedule a meeting. And whenever I click on schedule a meeting, I will go to this schedule meeting page. And inside the schedule meeting page, I will have to work on its on pressed function. So I'll have to add the information to the database over there, and then we'll go to the common chat widget screen where we will actually be implementing the function we just saw, that is this particular function here, this one. And then finally we will go to the meeting web view where we will actually embed our Jitsi meeting in a web view, and we will actually demonstrate the final application. So we'll also talk a little bit about the Jitsi Meet plugin, which we can also use for real life devices. So finally, that's all, and you can have a look at the resources. I'll update the website soon once the video is published and the Medium article is also published. Let's go right now and actually start working on the code. So now we have actually opened our starter project. So we cloned this particular starter project and we have it open in Android Studio. Alongside that, I have my simulator open in which I'm going to run the application. Quickly telling you about the folders. We have helpers here, which are actually functions to do a particular task. We do have models and we have request folder, which make requests to certain APIs or Firebase. We do have screens that actually represent each and every screen of our Flutter application. We have services, which are mostly exception handlers or validations. There are stores for state management, and then there are reusable widgets that we can use throughout the application. So that is about the folder structure. Now, this is a state in which I left our application in our last video. So we have our chat implemented. We also have the smart reply suggestions. So if I just click on any one of these, I am actually replying back to the other user. So now what we will do is we will implement the video calling or the video meetings feature. And for that, if you quickly open this to-do section here in Android Studio, you will find that we have 7 to-do items in 5 of the files. If you remember, I had earlier told you about the flow that will follow for this application. And then there we had discussed 5 steps or 5 different files in which we would make changes. And these are the 5 different files in that particular order. So what we will do now is actually go to the chat screen.dart file and work on implementing the bottom model sheet to show the options for creating instant and scheduled meetings. So if I go ahead and open my chat screen.dart file now, I see that I have a to-do on line number 60 and in line 61 it asks me to insert the chat meeting widget inside a bottom model sheet. So how we will do that in Flutter is actually using the show model bottom sheet function. And it takes in a context and a builder. So for builder, I'll say build context, and then I'll go ahead and specify the particular widget that it has to return. So in my case, that will actually be the chat meeting widget. And since this is a constant, I'm going to add the constant modifier here. So if I go ahead and save this right now, what I can do is after hot reload, I see that I get this beautiful bottom model sheet after clicking on this button, and we have two options here to send an instant meeting link or to schedule a meeting for later, although those are not working right now. So let's go ahead and actually work on that. We can close it by clicking on this icon here, and for selecting a different provider, it's something which we have not implemented yet, but if you want me to go ahead and do that, then you can let me know down in the comments. Next up, we'll actually implement these two functionalities for sending an instant meeting link and for scheduling a meeting for later. In order to send an instant meeting link and to schedule a meeting for later, to implement those functionalities, we'll have to actually write code inside the on tab functions of the list styles corresponding to these two list styles that we have. So you have TODOs in line number 47 and line number 57. For which you have to complete basically. So the first list style here that actually represents the send instant meeting link, which is this one. So in here what we will do is let's go ahead and first of all write navigator dot pop context. Now why I'm doing this is because whenever I click on this one, I expect this entire thing to close down just like this, and then I want to see the particular meeting URL in the chat. So the first thing I'll do is to pop out of this particular bottom model sheet that I'm showing. The next thing that I will do is to get the meeting link. So for that, what I'll say is meeting link instant can actually be assigned to fetch instant meeting URL, and the URL that we will right now fetch is actually gotten from this particular helper function. Now this also needs to be a string, so let's make that a string. And now if we go to this handler meeting handler file, you have a few functions here, and let's talk about them in brief. So we have a roundup within 30 minutes function that actually will be helpful for the for the scheduled meetings, so that we actually have the timings there in multiples of 30 minutes by default. And then we have to fetch the next start time, which will fetch the next rounded up time for your scheduled meetings. And then you have the fetch instant meeting URL, which you are using right now here. And you also have the fetch schedule meeting URL, and you have the fetch details from encoded schedule meeting URL. Now, if you remember, I had mentioned it when I was talking about Docusaurus, that we will actually be encoding our URLs in base64 string format. So that is what we are doing here, and how you do it in Flutter is creating this particular variable and then calling a function on that particular object, that is string to base64.encode and string to base64.decode if you want to decode a URL. So that's what you're doing, and we'll be generating a URL and also fetching details from URL using these functions. We will see them later on. Of course, I'll show them to you when we actually implement it. But for now, the next thing that we have to do inside on tab is to go ahead and send the message to the database, or basically store the link in the database. So for that, we'll be using chatstore.onSendMessage. Now onSendMessage actually connects to Firebase cloud Firestore, and it actually expects a content, a group chat ID and an ID. So ID is the ID of the person who is sending this message, group chat ID is the group chat ID for this conversation, and then content, what we will do is we will say it as it's MLI hyphen this particular variable, which is meeting link instant. So if you remember in the Docusaurus documentation, I had mentioned that we are using this to specify the type of meeting that we are trying to save into Firestore. So in our case, it's actually a meeting link instant type of meeting, and that's why we're using this prefix in the content. Okay. So now this to do we can remove, and the next to do that we have to do is here, and that is for scheduling the meeting for later. So this is a pretty simple one. You have to just make use of navigator. Now remember, this order here is going to be crucial. So if you say navigator.pop context, and then you must say navigator dot push name. So in our case, that will actually be schedule meetings.id. The order is important because you must get out of this particular bottom model sheet before you push into the schedule meeting screen. If you reverse this order, then you are basically going to come back to the screen, because you will first of all push to the schedule meeting screen and then pop out of that. So this is the order that you have to maintain. Now if I save this, I will see two things. The first thing is, if I click on send an instant meeting link, then I close, but I don't see anything on the chat screen yet. That is because I have not actually worked on showing that to the user so far. Right, we have not implemented the UI, which we will do shortly. But the other thing is, if I click on schedule a meeting for later, I am taken to this particular page which I can explore. So we have an option to kind of choose the date, and we have the option to kind of choose a time. So you see right now it's 4:46 in my emulator's time, and the nearest 30-minute time that I have to the start time is actually 5 p.m. So that is what I am seeing here. And in duration, it's actually 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and all the way till 3 hours 30 minutes. Excuse me, we have a start date here. You can make it start time. So that's about it. Now clicking on send here will not do anything. So let's go ahead and work on that and implement this particular section next. Next up, we have schedule meeting.dart, and in here in line number 152, we have our to do. So we have already seen the UI of this, and so there are three controllers that are actually managing things. The first one is going to be the date controller, the time controller, managing the start date and start time. Let's go ahead and make it start time, in fact. So that is here. And yeah, that's done. So the last thing is duration. So now what we have to do is, we have to go ahead and first of all fetch the schedule meeting URL, and then we have to add it to the cloud Firestore, and then finally pop out of the screen. So it's three easy steps. So what I'll say is string meeting link scheduled, and that will be equal to fetch schedule meeting URL. So again, these things are coming from this particular function which I already showed you, fetch schedule meeting URL. And the date here, you must have guessed by now, it's actually going to be the date controller. So I think it's like this date controller.text, and the time here will actually be time controller.text. All right. And like that, we have fetched our scheduled meeting link. Now to store it into Firestore database, we will do something similar that we did in our last step while creating instant meeting links. So I'll say chat store dot on send message, and in the content it will be actually MLS instead of MLI, because it's meeting link scheduled instead of meeting link instant. And then I will add the variable of meeting link scheduled. So that URL gets stored as a content. And finally, the navigator navigator dot pop context. So doing this will actually go ahead and save that to database and then pop out of the current screen. I know we have mentioned an email will be sent to everyone, and this will be done precisely a few minutes before the starting of the or before the start time of the scheduled meeting. I'll show you something else once we have actually implemented the UI. But this particular thing we'll do using NodeMailer once we have our server up and running. So that is something we'll do in a subsequent video. So I can go ahead and click on send right now, and I will come back to the screen. Again, I don't see anything on the screen so far. So let's go ahead and fix that thing and show the UI for each of these meetings that we have created. Okay, so previously we have actually went ahead and saved the instant meeting links and schedule meeting links to the database, or in our case the cloud Firestore, but we have not shown them in our emulator screen so far. So to do that, what we have to understand is that we have multiple types of content in our Firestore right now. So one type of content is actually the text messages that we have here. The second type of content is actually the instant meeting links that we have. And the third type is actually the schedule meeting links. So why are these two meeting links of different types? Because the information stored in schedule meeting links, such as the duration or when the meeting is starting, the start date and time, that is not a part of the instant meeting links. So basically we have to keep them as two separate links. So in our case, we have two different widgets for those. So we have created the schedule meeting item content and we have created the instant meeting item content, and we will return each of these based on whatever type of content I'm actually trying to show on my screen. So initially what I'm doing is I'm trying to fetch the type of content, and now this type is actually coming by splitting that string that we had. So if you remember back when we were talking about the Docusaurus website, we had this as a sample content over there. So if I split this string based on this hyphen, then the one I'll get is actually the meeting URL. So based on that, I can compare the first half of the list with the different type of contents that I can have. So it can be MLI or MLS, or in some cases nothing. So that is what we are trying to do here in our Android Studio. So coming back, the first thing that I'm checking if it's actually of the type MLI, and in that particular case what I should return ideally is actually the instant meeting item content. So I'll say this, and in the second case when it is equal to MLS, I should return the scheduled meeting item content, and in the third case it's actually by default returning the chat item content to me. So right now, since this is done, if I go ahead and save this, and I can see that suddenly I have these two meeting links that are here. Now these meeting links actually will contain information. So if this is a scheduled meeting link which is actually set to start at 5 p.m. And this is again had a duration of 30 minutes. And this is an instant meeting link. So if right now, if I follow those steps again, I can also remove this to do right now from here. So if I follow those steps again, I can create an instant meeting link, and I directly see that coming up here. And similarly, if I create a scheduled meeting link, let's say I'll assign a duration of 1 hour 30 minutes, and then I'll do a send here. So I see that here as well. So that much is done now. Now what should happen if I click on this particular join video meeting? So I should ideally be joining the video meeting, right? So that is something we have to do yet. But what is important to notice is actually we are pushing into another screen called the meeting web view, which is where we'll be using the Jitsi Meet thing to connect the users with a meeting that has been created using Jitsi Meet. And now this web view is embedded inside our application, so the entire experience sort of stays the same. Okay, so one more additional thing that we have to note here is whenever the meeting is being scheduled, we are making sure of one more thing, that is if the meeting is being joined too early. Now what do I mean if the meeting is being joined too early? So let's say right now I schedule this meeting for 6 p.m. right? So anytime before 5:55 p.m., that is 5 minutes before the scheduled time, is actually considered too early. So if I go ahead and click on this right now, I see that the video has not started yet, the meeting has not started yet, and it asks me to join at the scheduled time. So this is something which we are making use of, implementing using the validations that you'll find inside services. So in here we are checking if we are joining the meeting too early, and whether it's actually more than 5 minutes or not. So you can go ahead and check out this function and try to understand how things are. It's pretty simple. I'm sure you'll get it. So the next thing is to go ahead to meeting web view and start implementing, creating this web view for our application, so that we can actually explore the features of Jitsi Meet soon. In order to implement the meeting web view, we have to follow the two to-dos that we have to do here. We have a meeting URL that is being given to meeting web view from our widgets that are actually calling the meeting web view. So this is a generic screen that can actually handle any kind of URL that is being provided to it. So in the init state, first of all, we have to enable the Android virtual display. So how you do it is actually checking if the platform is Android first of all. So you have to say if platform dot is Android. So for platform, you have to go ahead and actually use the .io and then say is Android. And inside the if condition, you have to say web view dot platform. Again, web view has to be imported. So web view dot platform, and you can say that it's actually equal to Android web view. So Android web view, yeah. Alright, so what exactly are virtual displays in Android? So you can go ahead to this particular website where it talks about virtual display in a great detail, and you can check it out. So it's actually the content of a virtual display is rendered to Android view surface that is provided to the Android hardware display manager. And the other thing that we have to do is to finish the section of calling the web view. So remember, we are using the Flutter, the WebView Flutter official plugin in our case, and so we have to actually return that. So what I'll say is return safe area. So I want to make sure that I am actually within the app limits. So that's why I'll be using the safe area. And here, the first thing that I'll say is actually initial URL. So my initial URL will be equal to HTTPS. And then we can go ahead and add our widget.meeting URL. So why did I choose this as the initial URL? That is because in our meeting URL we start from meet.git.si /room name. So we need to ensure that I'm also adding the HTTPS, otherwise it doesn't work in the web view. You need to enable a few more flags. For example, you have to say that JavaScript mode is actually equal to JavaScript mode.unrestricted, and you can also allow this allows inline media playback, and you can set it to true. And finally, you have to set the user agent. So what is the function of user agent? So basically it actually mocks a particular browser. So you have all these different browsers that we are using, and we'll be using the Chrome browser. So right now, once I have written this, it means that my web view will actually use one of these known browsers, and it won't be showing you the error that I'm using a different browser that it does not support. Alright, so this being done, if I go ahead and save it and I'll hot reload it, so all my to-dos are complete. So I can go ahead and click on one of these meetings. So if I click on this particular meeting, I actually open this in my browser. So I have to allow the permission. First of all, it detects my name and it asks me to join the meeting. So I can join the meeting. I'm by default muted and my camera is off. Of course, the camera on iOS simulator does not exist, so that won't work as well. But anyway, let's explore the features here. So we have a chat option here, so you can go ahead and text anything you want. So something like hey or way, anything, and that also works. And you have a poll option here where you can create polls. So any XYZ question and any option A and B, and you can add those options, and you can remove this option, and you can send the poll. So everyone in this meeting will actually be able to have a look at this poll and vote. And similarly, if I go to this particular place, I have meeting participants. I can invite people, and you see this is the meeting URL that we had chosen. So you can also copy and share it, and then we have some of the other functionalities here, such as enter tile view, performance settings, security options, recording, and all that. So all of these features are actually available to you, which makes the Jitsi Meet a very useful piece of software for video meetings, and that's why we are using it in this particular tutorial. Okay. Now, this is all about this tutorial, but one thing I would like to mention is you can go ahead and try out this particular plugin called Jitsi Meet, which you'll find in Flutter pub.dv. So if you go to here and you say Jitsi Meet, so that actually opens up the corresponding package for you. Now this thing what it will do is that instead of you having to set up a web view, it sort of embeds that Jitsi Meet into your application. But the problem why I did not do it is because with my particular simulator that I'm using, it actually does not support Jitsi Meet so far, but I'm sure it works in Android. But for the iOS simulator, since I'm using a M1 chip, it does not support, and it's an open issue on the GitHub platform. So that's why I just went ahead and used the web view, which also works equally good. So you can explore this one. You'll have some little bit of configuration that you have to do here and there, and everything you'll find it here. And there are also a couple of Medium blogs which are really useful in that respect. So go ahead and check it out, take it and try this out as well. And let's go ahead and conclude the video now. In summary, we have seen how to build an application which can help us create and join instant meetings and also schedule meetings for later, which we can join at the given time. And along with the LinkedIn chat application, this has become a really powerful application now, which has several use cases. By the way, did you know that I am very active on Medium as well? So I have not only written blogs related to this particular LinkedIn clone series, I have written blogs related to MLH, Oracle, JavaScript, and a common Flutter misconception, security, and a lot of other things. So make sure to go ahead and check me out on Medium. You can find me on the URL absatyaprakash01.medium.com. I will put that in the description as well. And in the next video, we are going to have a look at the Firebase storage feature, and we'll actually see how we can add the features of adding images or videos to the chat, which will make it even more interesting. So until then, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.